Welcome to In These Strange Times, a series featuring Tulsans in conversation about the individual and collective changes we're all experiencing this year in 2020 and beyond. I'm your host, Alexander Taman, and this episode is called The Spirit of the Times. We give a special thanks to the Tam Bao Temple in East Tulsa for allowing us access to this beautiful, beautiful sacred space. Thank you and enjoy. Hello everyone.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. Why don't we get started by introducing ourselves, just share a little bit about who you are, and yeah, we'll start there. Why don't we start with you, Cassie?
My name is Casii Stephan. I'm a singer-songwriter by night and a marketing person by day. Lived in Tulsa 6 years.
Okay. Next we have Sofia. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Sofia Noshay. I've been in Tulsa for about 10 years now. I kind of focus on community in a lot of different ways, whether that's in creating physical space. I do a lot of real estate stuff. And community is just a very important, integral part of who I am. I'm a mom. I have 2 little twin babies that are almost 16 months old. Take up a lot of my time and sanity. But yeah, I know that we're talking spirituality.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of like this weird chameleon. I grew up in the Jain faith to a very religious family. We actually had a temple that people used to come to worship at our house. I married a Jewish guy who his parents were from a multi-religious background. He grew up Jewish. I converted to Judaism. And we have like multiple faiths in my immediate family. And yeah, spirituality is an important part of my life.
Yeah. And last but certainly not least,
Yes, thank you for having me. My real name is Keith Daniels. I do go by Sneak, which is an artist name as well, but it's also a childhood name. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, filmmaker, creative director, thinker, philosopher. I don't like to box myself too much, but like a man of many things. So I've been in Tulsa basically my whole life, born and raised here. Lived out in Seattle for a little bit, but after I finished school, but yeah. Like she said, I'm here just, like you said, talk spirituality and other things, and definitely have floated through a lot of philosophies or religions since I've been a kid. So
yeah.
it'd be good to kind of converse with other people about, you know, what you believe and your thoughts on life and things like that.
Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome, welcome. I'm super excited for this conversation, just because, as you've all mentioned, you know, spirituality is sacred. It's a part of our journey, our identity. It's so much of who we are, and for me personally, my faith, my spirituality has really kind of anchored me and kind of helped to like center me amidst all the crazy. So why don't we just kind of talk about, you know, a little bit about our spiritual journeys, if you will. Speak to the path. Feel free.
I was born, I guess you could say, a Christian. I was raised a Christian.
Okay.
My uncle's a pastor, my grandma's a pastor. So I was raised in like a black church too, which is real, you know, it's different in a say. It's like, it's real spiritual in a way. Like, so I had that basically growing up. But I think around 15, 16, I kind of wanted to venture out, to look at other ideologies and not kind of a thing in my family in a sense. But I don't know, for a while I kind of was just, didn't really associate with a particular religion and more just had an idea of God. But as of recently, like when I moved to Seattle, I started studying Hinduism and was realizing I was, you know, started living like a Hindu lifestyle. which led me into Buddhism, you know, Chinese Taoism, and Japanese Zen, which is kind of the philosophies that I study today. Probably more practicing of Zen because I like to meditate a lot. It's just fun for me. I think I have a better understanding maybe of Taoism naturally. And yeah, those are just weird names to say, but definitely was a huge journey from that to there, because we're talking like over 10 years. But yeah, so I definitely stuck my head in a lot of things, but kind of landed on that just because it spoke more to me, spoke more to my spirit, and it was just a very wise philosophy. And I'm kind of about wisdom and about learning, you know. So.
I'll go first. I grew up, I would be described non-denominational Christianity. I actually have an uncle who's a pastor and grandparents, so I do relate with you on that.
Yeah.
My whole family was very much heavily involved in church. Went there for the first 25 years of my life, moved to Tulsa, and started to just kind of realize how to make it my own instead of it just being in my family. And so it's forced me to process through some of the things I believe. I still, you know, I still follow the faith. I'm still involved in it. It's just, to me, there's things that I still keep, and then there's things that I've adjusted over time in my theology with that. And so, yeah, I would still call myself a Christian or a Jesus follower. Sometimes those words have so much history with them that,
Yeah, weight.
yes, that it's like, to call yourself that puts a wall up in front of you with people because of all of
I feel you.
the history with it, especially in Tulsa.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much, unfortunately, it's hard to run into somebody that hasn't had a bad history with the church. The question for me has always been, how do I authentically live this out in this day and age with the people around me?
Yeah.
That is the question that I'm kind of always asking.
Yeah.
And I think it's been even a bigger question in this year.
Yeah. Sophia.
Yeah, religion's an interesting thing for me. A lot of times people ask me, you know, what do you practice? And obviously it background-wise,
Yeah.
Hinduism or Jainism is like kind of what people see first front. But I always say I wouldn't call myself religious as much as spiritual. I feel like my faith is more a connection to a larger being than myself, and religion is kind of just different playbooks of how to have that relationship with God.
Yeah.
I've kind of struggled with religion. You know, my parents were immigrants, and faith was an incredible large part, not just of background, but, you know, like Black church is very much like this. It's a culture. And so there's so much tied into culture that is religion. And I really struggled with it. Jainism is focused on just getting rid of any kind of connection to selfishness or things. So that was interesting. And then Judaism kind of found me a little bit, but the whole concept behind it is tikkun olam, which is repairing the world. And that's kind of my relationship with God is, you know, how can we make this better for the people that are here, not for your life the next time you're reincarnated, but how do we make this better for people right now?
Yeah. Okay, so I grew up as well, kind of in like the Southern Black church. My family on my mom's side is like Church of God in Christ. So I was like always in church, always in church throughout the week, you know, certainly on Sunday. But at the same time, my mom kind of was like finding her faith and was moving away from a lot of that because she grew up in that as well. So while living in Chicago, we didn't really like attend church regularly for a while, but I was attending Catholic school. So it was still very much a part of my like development. I didn't want to compartmentalize my faith like I saw peers do, and I wasn't necessarily like itching to get away from church along with like family and all the other things that you kind of shed when you jump into college and like your independence and things, right? Like that was a grounding for me like as a kid and as an adolescent, and so like I wanted that for adulthood. I've had a lot of growth and arcs and things like that because I was just exposed to a lot of different faiths and belief systems. A lot of friends of like, I mean, Baha'i faith, Santeria, Voodoo, like just had a really like eclectic experience, which I'm grateful for.
And you sparked a question, sir, for me
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of wanted to ask generally is, what is spirituality? Because I think we keep saying it, and I want to like kind of define it in a sense, or maybe not define it because that's kind of putting it in a box, and you might not want to put things in a box. But to say like, what does spirituality kind of mean to you in a sense? Like, I try not to differentiate the spiritual from the material in a sense, like, or my everyday interactions, you know. So I try to be not brush my teeth spiritually in a sense, just brush my teeth fully, you know what I mean, and do everything fully and do everything present and in the moment. And I think to me that's being spiritual, and it's not necessarily always like my mind on God or whatever a God is, or it's just more of being present and being accepting, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to that. I would say I think spirituality is just constantly being the best version of yourself that you can. So like, I mean, like, it's wild to think the pandemic, you know, I know that that's part of our conversation, but like so much has happened within that time frame that it feels like lifetimes at this point. And so like, I even think about like my evolution just with current events and things that, you know, like I'm always in this state of constant learning. And even as a person of color, like there's so much that I've learned from the last, 7 months or whatever, that in becoming a better person, you have to take that knowledge with you. Like you can't just pretend that you don't know it. And frankly, that's one of the reasons that I have trouble with religion sometimes, because it's putting people in a box, right? And saying this is right and this is wrong.
I think as like a person of color with intersectional experiences and identities, there's the religion that I was indoctrinated in and experienced growing up. Like there was no space for the full authentic expression of myself there, you know, and that was a crisis of consciousness to really want to be a part of this community, but feel so othered and alienated simultaneously by it. And that was just something that wasn't sustainable, but I also realized like didn't have to be a part of my spirituality. But what about you, Casey? Like,
What is my definition of spirituality?
Yeah.
I guess maybe mine feels like more like a Merriam-Webster definition of it.
okay.
I love your guys' answers though. They're so poetry and lyrical. It's the framework that we view this physical realm, and then also if you do view a spiritual realm alongside it, how do you view that? That's what I see spirituality as. It's the perception that you're going to view that through, and there's similarities and there's differences, and how it affects the way you live your life and how it affects the way you treat others, and that's, I guess that's how I define spirituality.
Yeah. Okay, so again, these strange times, going back to like how they have specifically like impacted your spiritual practice or journey or like what have you.
I think for me, obviously, you know, not having a larger gathering to go to is definitely a different thing for me. The removing of that, it's been helpful to kind of, it feels like it's been a focus, like a focus of, okay, so what does this really mean to me?
Yeah.
What does this really mean to how I live my life out? And then even though it's been like, you know, one horrible thing after another, in some weird way, it's helped me realize, okay, I feel like I understand more what it means to live this out. Yeah, it just feels like there's this sharpening focus of, okay, so this is what it means when Jesus said this in the Gospels. And before it was kind of like, he said this, but it felt vague to me. And yeah, the only other way I can say is like, there feels like a focus. And I'm still figuring out how to practically live that out.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, if I just adjust my trajectory like this much, right, we're eventually going to see a huge change over time. And so that's what I'm kind of like focusing on long term.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, a lot, and Alex, you and I have talked about this in a different world, like this time has been a way to like heal myself, to have that relationship. So like fully transparent, I recognize the privilege of not having to know where my next meal is coming from, and knowing that, I have a roof over my head and those types of things, where like so many people don't have that right now. Really focusing on what is important without like these like the perception of eyes watching you, and you're in your home, you get to do it on your terms, and there's such a beauty in that.
It forced me to meditate more, in a sense, look more inwardly, to read more. It focused me to buckle down and get on my career path, because it was like a now or never type thing. So for me, it's been kind of a blessing in disguise. I just know that in life there's calamity, and death is just one of those that we just can't escape it.
Like, how has the experiences that we've had over this year, what's been the biggest like challenge, I think, to your faith and to your belief in terms of what you thought you knew, or what you were maybe vacillating with? What has kind of really shaken up the spiritual ground?
I really struggle, I think, if coming back to my definition of spirituality being around like seeing the good in people, love someone other than just yourself mentality, that I really struggle with, because I have to check myself a lot. But that is really what's, from a spiritual perspective, that is the hardest thing for me during this, because people are really in your face about it.
I haven't had really anything test my faith, only because Buddhism is like not a philosophy of believing, more than experiencing. Everybody lives their own life, but somehow your life affects everything, and everything affects you. So it's that duality. So it's like, what can we even really do? And I don't mean that to say there's nothing to do, but I'm being real with that. This is what I believe. I can't say it's been too difficult beyond, I guess, the social interactions with people. For myself personally, I've been just treating everything normal, because this is life. It's normal to me. Calamity is always there in some form, like you said. It's always there.
Yes, like calamity, good, bad, harmony in all things is ever present. It just feels like we're having such a shared experience right now, and that maybe amplifies a bit of the trauma or the perceived trauma.
I see this pandemic as a blessing in some ways, because pandemic, I think, has really awakened people to say, oh shit, there's actually really bad things that like I'm so blessed, and because of that, or maybe just because of a bigger reason, I need to be there for other people, not just myself. And I think there's power in that, and it makes me happy, because for some people, yes, it's maybe for a month and then it goes away, but during that month, like, they can't go back, to your point, they can't go back to the person that they were before that either.
2 questions, right? So this may take a while. What have you learned about yourself, or about your experience in these strange times, and what gives you hope?
I think for me, hope comes from my faith in realizing that, and trusting that things always work out for good. I have to rely on that supernatural belief, because sometimes it just feels like there isn't any good. It just, honestly, that's what it feels like. And I'm like, there has to be something working behind the scenes, because I can't just focus on, and I can't believe that this is all there is.
Sneak.
I don't want to be that guy or pessimistic, but hope is slightly meaningless to me. There's no point into holding on to it, in my opinion. Not to say there isn't things to look forward to or things that you might want to desire.
Yeah.
It's just that hope is just an idea. It's a concept of a reality or something that you're wanting, that you're holding on to.
So how do you reconcile that with like the aspirations that you spoke to before?
I feel like everything is, you can do karma, you can have action, or non-doing, which is still action. So if there's something that I truly desire in my heart, you know, I put my all being into doing that.
Yeah.
Living it every day, and everything I do is gonna take a step towards that.
Yeah.
So even when I perish, it will leave an impression.
Yeah.
The best where we do is where the highest level of we're thinking of what we want and we see as world peace, or we see as coming together as one, or one culture, or one community. There will still be bad. We can only hope that we are vibrating at a higher level each time, and that we're coming back, and the next generation is like, okay, here's the mistakes we made. So you're gonna make mistakes, but try not to make these ones, and then teach your next generation the same thing until we're making different or new mistakes, but we've got rid of the old ones.
Yeah.
Well, and to that, like there's a people define spirituality like blind following, right? Like God will put me in this way,
Yeah.
or these are the steps I have to take, and
Yeah.
then something will happen. Like your definition of what I'm understanding of spirituality is that it's not just that blind belief, it's the action piece, the manifest destiny kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Which I actually believe in. I have trouble understanding religions where people are just like, this is what it is, and
Yeah.
so that's how we do things.
Yeah. That's so real.
And
Yeah.
one of the hardest things, though, is like figuring out what do you want.
Exactly.
Right? Like
that's the real question.
that's
The $1 million
We're so conditioned to be so deficit framed. We know very intimately what we don't want, but as soon as the therapist or the best friend asks, like, yeah, but like, what do you want? It's like, well, I know I don't want this because I'm super happy, and then we go back into the kind of ruminating and
But that's a great way to find out what you want.
exactly.
It's not knowing what you don't like.
Exactly. But
You know what I
then I believe that we start to manifest exactly what we don't want by fixating on it and focusing our perception and our perspective on it. And so it's like, well, it's taken up all the air in the room, and you don't even have the space to see the community and to see the beautiful people that like are there with you, for you, supporting you, because the focus is on that lower vibrational, you know. How have you given yourself grace in this space and in this time? Double question again. How are you like filling your cup? Because actions are important, right? And I can think about that scenario. I may not be like catching buses, but like something fairly like menial can make or break me depending on how full my cup is.
Grace. What is grace?
I think it's a kindness and a compassion that I am so much more inclined to give to others without even considering giving it to myself.
By doing things that make me happy.
Okay.
Like hiking,
Yeah.
reading at a park on a nice day, doing wholesome things, you know, spending time with my family, going to my nephews. I love kicking it with my nephews, man. It's just like, to me, that's like the most important thing. Like that's like giving back into me, you know, is spending time with my family, and just doing things that I really love, like going to a bookstore or something, man, and just smelling new paper or something like that. Like, it's just weird, but just doing things without judgment that I don't like. I just let myself be me. I think that's kind of giving myself grace.
For far too long, I think my action has been kind of like this negative, internal voice for me of, you know, like, oh, you might not have enough experience to do this, or you don't have the bandwidth, or you're just not enough. If I can get out of my own way, all the things that I've hoped and dreamed for are really mine to have. I just need to just keep going, right? Like it's action, but like action without overthought.
Yeah.
You know, like just move and it'll happen, and just be diligent and be grateful for that path.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm terrible at giving myself grace. Working on it. I would say the biggest thing I'm learning, and I think it's like a combination of, I turned 31, so I feel like in your 30s, maybe this is just me, but you start realizing, oh wait, this is what I'm actually good at. This is my strength. This is my weakness. Let's be a little bit more self-aware.
Yeah. If you're doing it right, that's what happens in the 30s.
That's what happens in the 30s. I'm starting. I'm getting there.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And I think for me, it's realizing I live with a roommate who's a great multitasker. I am a terrible multitasker. And so it's like, I don't need to compare myself. And also realizing, like, okay, so I'm really good at having, after my day job, working on music 2 nights a week. And then the other 2 nights, I need just to not do anything and not feel the pressure to keep going and keep doing and keep trying to make something happen. Like, it's okay to have those moments of just not having anything planned.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm working on that part. But then also for me, like, filling my cup is, I love nature, walks in nature. So important. Like, seeing the bigger picture, I feel like, is the big thing. Hey, look up. There is hope. There is this rainbow. There is also the crap. Let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge that we're all going through this together, and then let's move forward to what is the next step.
Yes.
So.
I mean, the beauty, I think, you know, you all are all artists and creating, and as someone that is not in that world, there's such a gift in this because you're putting tangibility to something that I know I'm feeling, but I don't know how to pour out and have. And I mean, like, I feel music, even though I don't sing or produce or whatever. And like, I feel art. And it's just something that's such a great, like, beautiful gift that you're giving the rest of us that don't have that skill, really.
I think everybody's an artist, though. Maybe not honed into like music or anything, but like you said, you have twins. That's an art form, I imagine.
Big fan of your work.
By
the way.
To work with, and that is
That's
what
true.
inspires music and inspires painting and stuff, which is love, which is in art form. So I definitely think you're an artist as well.
Well, thank
I agree.
Yeah, cosign. So, as artists, creatives, and appreciators of the arts and creativity, it's such an intimate and I think intuitive process. So, as it pertains to like your spirituality, how do you tap in? You know, like, what does prayer and what does meditation kind of look like? And has it had to pivot at all? You know, because, you know, coming together in the faith and in, you know, the formal setting, like, that's a no-go. That's not necessarily been safe. So that has kept so many people, you know, confined to their own space and still trying to connect with their higher power, right? So how do you connect in terms of like prayer and meditation?
It's in the intentionality of things, right? And so early on in all of this pandemic, we said, okay, at 4 o'clock, it doesn't matter. We are not taking meetings. We're not doing anything. But from 4 to 6, while our kids are awake, we're going to be with them and be fully with them, which is hard, but also like such a joy. Back to your rainbows question, like the ability to have had this pandemic at a time that I know I'll never get back with them, and they're changing so rapidly, like it's been such a gift. And, you know, having that intentional space that you stop everything to say, okay, this is my time with my spouse, and this is time for myself.
Casey?
For me, it's been, I think, again, the walks with nature, and then when I listen to music, like I've been listening to some, worship songs in that genre, specific songs that I feel like are speaking to me in the moment. But also just, for me, it's been like just talking to God and just being, and also being okay with being, like, He can handle my anger. I can be mad. I can be frustrated. I can be despondent, you know, and it's like that myth of like, you know, if I believe that he really is God, he's not fragile. He's not
Yeah.
going to fall apart at my anger.
Yeah.
Or my depression, or
Yeah.
he's not ashamed of me in that
Yeah.
state. And so being open and vulnerable in that way has been very helpful
Yeah.
with that prayer meditation, just being honest and real.
Mm-hmm. I've tried to get myself into a bit of somewhat of a routine that keeps me grounded, right? So like I try to meditate before my day gets going. So that can either be like while I'm in bed or in the shower, you know, and just kind of like, you know, going through affirmations, and also I think engaging in prayer in the context of like communication. I believe there are different types of prayer. Like I think that, you know, there is, you know, the communication and the communion aspect. I think there's like intercession where our hope and concern and protective, all the things go into our like engaging in, I think, spiritual dialogue with our Creator and with the universe and even the environment on the behalf of others, right? If they're dealing or struggling with sickness or, you know, difficulty and challenge, it's just kind of like willing everything to work in their favor and to move on their behalf. And I like to run. Like it's one of the few times that you've seen me running.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times that I am like legit by myself, and that feels like meditation because I am just kind of clearing my thoughts and things like that. It feels like active worship because I'm taking care of this temple, and it feels like such a gift because my ableness is such a privilege. Well, this was wonderful again.
Yes, thank you all so
you.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you all
thank
for
you.
showing up and sharing, and just, I hope this has helped to make some sense of the
it's felt
things
a
or to
little
fill the cup in
cleansing.
a way, you know?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all have
I cut deep like a samurai. My spirit lives, I could never die, but my flesh will, so I emphasize no closed minds in my circle. Outside the box since I was a youngin', shine so bright, so holes in abundant. Just I can have it, don't mean I want it. What I really want sometimes I never get, and if I do, it's only for a split. Second on the stage, and I'm barely getting paid, but it's all about to change. Just have a little faith. Ay, just have a little faith, like my granny used to say, and she stay on the north, right by McLean. I remember them days, like back in '98. I still love you if I never call. Hey, no, I think about you every day.